What would happen if every human being on Earth disappeared? This isn't the story of how we might vanish. It's the story of what happens to the world we leave behind. In this episode of Life After People, humanity takes a holiday. What will remain when Christmas is past? These turkeys avoid the plate, but will they live to see another Thanksgiving? And what will happen to mankind's holiday destinations? This one has already become a holiday hell. Welcome to Earth. Population 0. Throughout history, mankind marked the passing of time with special holidays. Days of celebration. Places of escape. But now, the party is over. One day after people. It's still Christmas at Detroit's Always Christmas shop. The lights sparkle. The animated Santas and snowmen sing carols. In the time of humans, Christmas spawned its own economy. Each year at Christmas time, Americans spent $154 billion. They imported nearly $500 million worth of Christmas decorations alone. That's more than it cost to launch the space shuttle. The most iconic symbol of the season was the Christmas tree. But by the 21st century, more than 60% of families put their presents under trees made of aluminium or plastic. Because of the chemistry of their main ingredient, plastic trees are destined for a long life after people.
This is a very typical artificial Christmas tree. It's primarily made of two materials, steel or metal and plastic. You've got wire rods that are covered in PVC or polyvinyl chloride.
PVC is better known as vinyl, the same material that made records and gave cars that new car smell. Another artifact of Christmas is a traditional holiday food that was both beloved and reviled. The fruitcake. Invented in the Middle Ages and popularized in Victorian England, fruitcakes were built to last. A densely packed loaf that didn't need to be refrigerated. It was often joked that fruitcakes would last forever. But because of one key ingredient, perhaps that's not a joke at all. The twinkling Christmas lights dim as the power grid fails. Two days after people. Another Christmas icon is in trouble. Reindeer. Although they may seem like a Christmas invention, reindeer are a domesticated species that live across the Earth's polar regions. In places like Alaska, they were bred for milk, meat, and even for pulling sleighs. How they became part of the Christmas story isn't entirely clear. But many believe the image of Santa's sleigh being pulled by flying reindeer evolved from pagan images of the Norse god Thor, with his sky chariot being pulled by flying goats. There are over 30,000 domesticated reindeer in Alaska alone. But now, with no humans to care for them, there is a threat looming nearby. Will these reindeer live to see another Christmas? Three days after people. Another holiday animal also faces tough times. Turkeys wander hungrily in their pens. In the time of humans, turkeys were an essential part of American culture. In fact, founding father Benjamin Franklin wanted the turkey, not the bald eagle, to be the national bird. By the 21st century, American farms were producing over 270 million turkeys per year. 46 million of them destined to be eaten for Thanksgiving dinner. With people gone, these turkeys have avoided the axe. But something humans have done to make turkeys more appealing will also seal their fate.
Tom turkey for the dinner table, just not gonna make it.
Selective breeding has created a turkey with massive breasts that meets consumer demand, but threatens supply. The turkey's breasts are too big to allow them to fly, too big for males to even be able to mount their mates.
Farm-bred turkeys are actually produced by artificial insemination. So in order to reproduce, that's not gonna happen.
This generation of Thanksgiving turkey may be the last. One week after people. Steel roller coasters that once echoed with screams are now silent. Theme parks were one of the world's favorite holiday destinations. Roller coasters first appeared in America in the 1880s, and for nearly a century, they were all made of wood. Although the first steel coaster was built in 1959, it wasn't until the 1970s that a breakthrough in engineering resulted in the birth of the extreme coaster. Looping madly scream machines, like the Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California. The extreme coasters relied on highly engineered steel.
The steels that go into a ride like this have to have certain characteristics. Steel is basically about 97 or 98% iron, but then like a good soup, it has a few little things stuck in there, some silicon in it, some manganese, but the most important element is carbon. You can increase the strength of a steel by adding carbon. It's really a small amount, but it's a very powerful addition.
Adding as little as 0.5% of carbon can make steel 2 to 3 times stronger. But even the toughest steel has an ancient enemy: rust.
If we get a scratch on the ride here, well, we go ahead and sand it up and protect it and recoat it.
Now, without maintenance, a tiny scratch allows rust to take hold on the exposed steel. Not far away, a bizarre holiday oasis flourishes in the barren desert. Golf course fairways glisten. Water fountains spray. And power still flows in the getaway of the stars. Palm Springs, California.
This seems to me to be a place that really doesn't belong here. You drive around in Palm Springs and you see lawns, you see all these flowers, there are fountains and ponds. It just seems like this is a bad place to build a so-called civilization.
Despite being built in a barren desert, Palm Springs was crowded with more golf courses per square mile than any other place in America. But now, the golf course sprinklers keep the fairways lush and inviting for no one. There's another bizarre human artifact towering over the desert floor. It is the Palm Springs aerial tramway. In the time of humans, it was a tourist attraction that stretched for a mile across 5 steel towers from the desert floor to a mountain peak 8,500 feet above sea level. But now, the car sits empty, 200 feet in the air, swinging in a breeze overlooking the vacant resort city. The traffic lights still blink. And the air conditioners still hum in Palm Springs because much of the power is still on. Due to the city's reliance on a massive forest of wind turbines. 4,000 of them still spin just outside the resort city. As long as the wind pushes the blades, electricity keeps pumping out. These windmills appear to be very simple, but looks can be deceiving.
A wind turbine is a fairly complicated beast. There's wind speed measuring sensors, wind direction measuring sensors, and they actually control the pitches of the blades so that you're producing the right amount of power all the time.
But high tech demands high maintenance.
You have to have lubricants, you have to have hydraulic fluids. It's just like in your car, you have to change the oil ever so often or your motor is going to seize up. The same thing happens with these things. If you don't replenish the oil, the lubricants, and the hydraulic fluids, they're going to quit working.
1 week after people, their blades still spin, generating thousands of kilowatts every hour, every day, every time the wind blows. But just over the horizon, the winds of destruction are beginning to howl. One month after people, in a series of steel sheds and concrete bunkers in rural Pennsylvania, thousands of pounds of explosive power sit idle in a fireworks factory. In the time of humans, over 200 million pounds of fireworks were set off annually. That's twice the explosive power of the nuclear bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. But now, those fireworks await a celebration that will never come. Are these explosives in any danger of going off? It happened at a fireworks factory in Denmark in 2004. 1 person was killed and 17 injured. Over 200 houses were damaged. The final explosion resembled a nuclear mushroom cloud. In America, regulations require smaller buildings, each containing smaller amounts of explosives, to prevent a massive explosion like the one that occurred in Denmark. One month after people, the fireworks and gunpowder lie dormant behind blast walls in their bunkers. There will be no fireworks display this year. At least, not yet. In Alaska, these domesticated reindeer are struggling to survive without their human masters. And the domesticated reindeer are about to come into contact with their larger wild cousins, the caribou. Reindeer and caribou are actually the same species, but with one key difference. Reindeer are domesticated, while caribou run wild. 900,000 caribou range in massive migratory herds across Alaska.
The caribou can migrate up to 3,000 miles in a year. The caribou are like the lean, mean running machines, and the reindeer are the couch potatoes. The caribou are actually built for running. They got long legs, slender bodies. The reindeer have very short legs, very heavy bodies.
Although they aren't built to travel long distances, reindeer can't help heeding the call of the wild. Even in the time of humans, domesticated reindeer often disappeared from Alaskan rangeland, joining the caribou herds as they swept across the countryside.
When they come out onto the rangeland, being migratory animals, being very closely related, they do intermingle. And when the caribou goes on through their migration, the reindeer have a tendency to travel along with them.
Now, without humans to tend them, the once sedentary reindeer will join the caribou herds and face the challenge of a 3,000-mile migration. Further south, in Glacier Bay, luxury cruise ships rock silently in the harbor. In the time of humans, hundreds of these ships sailed the Inside Passage from Vancouver to Seward, taking 500,000 visitors annually on a scenic holiday. But without maintenance, even the small pocket cruise ships face the creeping effects of Alaska's weather.
I think generally during the summer season when most cruise ships are operating, the cold weather isn't too much of a hazard. But in winter, when it's very, very cold, when rain freezes on deck during the winter season, that can be hazardous.
As the snow piles up on the decks, sunshine and daytime warming creates a thick sheath of ice, covering everything from the portholes to the rigging. It's eerily beautiful. But snow and ice buildup creates a weight that a cruise ship is not designed to bear.
A ship rarely sits completely even in the water. There's going to be one side or the other where it's leaning a slight bit, and in the lower recesses is where water and snow are going to build up. And gradually they're going to make the ship tilt over.
For this ship, the voyage is over. Six weeks after people. At the San Diego Wild Animal Park, the lions are getting hungry. A lion can go for 2 weeks without eating, but it's now been over a month since their last feeding. The lions are so ravenous they are willing to test the electrified fence that surrounds their enclosure. To their surprise, they don't get a shock, since the power grid failed weeks ago. Now, the biggest obstacle is the moat. The moats are over 18 feet wide. But lions have been known to leap more than 30 feet. And now, they're free.
The first thing they would do is go for food, whether it's in the zebra enclosure right next door or somewhere throughout the park. They would be timid at first because they're used to a very small area.
But soon they would expand their horizons in a search for food. There is a new king of the urban jungle. Six months after people. Some ski runs are beginning to look the way they did before man claimed them as his winter playground. But strangely, while some ski runs have already seen pine saplings sprout, others remain mysteriously free of growth, as if still being groomed by human hands. 1 year after people. The wind turbine farms still tower over the desert outside Palm Springs, California. The steel towers face a worse enemy than rust: the wind itself.
These wind turbines are designed for a specific range of wind velocities. If you exceed that velocity, they're essentially going to fly apart.
That's why these windmills were designed with automatic braking systems to shut them down during extremely high winds. But what if those systems fail? It actually happened in Denmark in 2008. Now, after a year without maintenance, acres of power-producing windmills are vulnerable to the same fate.
The first time a 100-mile-an-hour wind comes through here, the rotor's going to be spinning faster than it should. That's going to create vibration. The turbine's going to probably start to come apart.
You would see the thing fly off, and then when it hit the ground, you would see dust flying, parts flying everywhere. You're going to have all sorts of mayhem.
"20 years after people, with the windmill farms destroyed, the power went out long ago in Palm Springs. The once bustling resort town is eerily silent. Its golf courses have returned to sand. Its hotels, empty shells. We know this because just down the road from Palm Springs is a place where life after people has already begun. "20 years after people. Top-class hotels are only checking in vermin. Once lush golf courses have turned into acres of sand. And luxury swimming pools are now empty cesspits. This is the fate of the vacation destination once called Palm Springs. We know what Palm Springs might look like 20 years after people, because there's a place just like it only 60 miles away where it's already happened. The Salton Sea is the largest lake in California. Conceived as a resort paradise for boaters, water skiers, and holidaymakers, it was once called the next Palm Springs. Instead, it became an empty wasteland of foul smells. Abandoned houses and acres of dead fish.
The Salton Sea is one of the most beautiful places from a distance, and one of the most foul, feculent places when you get close up. Dead fish, a nice odor of ammonia, and you think, this is really hideous.
The heyday of the Salton Sea was during the 1960s and 70s. Holiday homes popped up like cactus blossoms. Crowds thronged the beaches, swimming, boating, and water skiing during the day. And at night, sipping martinis at the yacht club. Now, the crowds at the yacht club are only pigeons. The holiday homes lie open to the elements. And campgrounds look more like burial grounds.
These hookups all throughout the campground, they're kind of like tombstones to the dead campground.
What happened to turn this lush oasis into an apocalyptic wasteland? It began in the 1970s. Masses of fish suddenly died, floating to the surface by the thousands. The reason for the dead fish was agricultural runoff from local farms.
Because of all these fertilizers running in there, we get this tremendous growth of algae. And as this algae dies, it falls to the bottom. And it creates a layer in the bottom of the sea where there's no oxygen. So we have bacteria that are eating all this dead organic matter and creating hydrogen sulfide gas.
Hydrogen sulfide is a gas that is as toxic as cyanide, causing extreme damage to the central nervous system, eventually destroying the ability to breathe. It was so deadly, it was used as a poison gas during the First World War. It's just as deadly today.
And at times it can kill millions of fish. A few years ago, about 7 million fish died at once.
The fish continued to die. Then the birds that ate the fish also got sick and died. Residents claimed they could smell and taste the gas in the air. People stopped coming to the Salton Sea. At its height, the population of Salton Sea was around 15,000 people, with thousands more arriving on weekends. But holiday homes were abandoned. Resort development stopped in mid-construction. Mobile homes, boats, even the yacht clubs, all left behind. Today, where thousands once lived and played, only a few hundred people remain in each of the tiny shoreside communities, surrounded by the ruins of holiday homes. Decades after being abandoned, the effects of water, sun, and salt are clear.
This is an old trailer. I think it's an Airstream trailer, and it's been exposed to the environment for 40 or 50 years at least. After people are gone, once one of the doors starts flopping in the wind, or perhaps one of the windows breaks, and the environment enters this trailer, the whole thing just becomes food for the environment. All the materials that are composite or man-made are falling apart. This here is like masonite or particle board. It's decaying much more rapidly than the solid timber.
Like the people vanishing from the toxic sea, the structural elements slowly disappear from the houses.
This is about a 40 or 50-year-old building, and although we still have some structural frame in place, there's not much left. Once the roof went away, the windows are gone, I don't see any doors, any glass. It's all actually deep, several feet down underneath this salt and sand.
Ultimately, it'll go back to being desert with a lot of garbage on it.
But in this desert of a future, time and nature may lead to a bigger than ever fireworks display. "20 years after people, vines and trees have covered up or broken through the concrete and steel bunkers of what was once a fireworks factory. Fireworks were a dangerous way to celebrate. In the time of humans, on average, fireworks injured nearly 10,000 people a year. Now it's late summer, dry heat, and a wildfire begins to burn out of control through the woods. The fire reaches the edges of the fireworks factory. For a decade, water has dripped or flooded into the steadily deteriorating bunkers. Gunpowder easily absorbs water, but wet gunpowder takes on a strange characteristic. After it dries out, it becomes more volatile. The finely milled powder clumps together, burning less evenly and sometimes exploding more powerfully. Now, flames lick through cracks in the walls and the powder ignites. The fire spreads from bunker to bunker, where thousands of pounds of prepared fireworks lie dormant. These explosives were destined for over 100 different fireworks displays. Now, they all go off at once. Across the country, real snow mixes with artificial flocking at Detroit's Always Christmas shop. Soil has built up on the floor of the showroom. Grass grows in the aisles of decorations. Vines climb up plastic Santas and toy soldiers. And in a nearby aisle, fruitcakes still rest. They owe their longevity to one key ingredient, alcohol, one of mankind's oldest disinfectants. The combination of rum or brandy with dense flour actually creates an anaerobic environment, an oxygen-free interior that inhibits microbe growth. 20 years after people, the fruitcake shows no sign of decay. Maybe fruitcakes will last forever. But the classic Christmas reindeer, long ago swept up in caribou migrations, have disappeared. While some have interbred with their wild caribou cousins, most died out quickly after people. Although reindeer and caribou are the same species, there's a fundamental difference that caused many of the females to drop out of the herd within the first year. Reindeer have their calves 1 month before caribou.
They would start falling behind during their calving seasons and fall prey to the bear and wolves.
The reindeer species is gone. "50 years after people. A mystery remains on the ski slopes. While some ski runs have completely reverted to nature, others are strangely clear, as if groomed just yesterday. The reason? Slopes originally cleared without heavy machinery recover quickly. But those that were intensively engineered or graded defy the return of nature.
Graded ski runs are machine graded with heavy equipment like bulldozers and scrapers, things like that. A lot of the topsoil is scraped away or buried beneath the subsoil, and the soils are compacted by the machinery. So there's reduced soil depth for plant rooting, and as well as the soils being compacted makes it harder for plant roots to grow there.
These ski runs will remain just as humans left them for a very long time. In Southern California, a new top cat enjoys his spot in the sun. Having escaped from the San Diego Wild Animal Park, the African lions have spread out and adapted to their new environment.
We've got predatory cats that size from San Diego to Santa Barbara. Real easy to get places on the freeways, get off the freeways into open savannas. Perfect environment for them. There's a lot of ranches in the area. They would be able to take down cows, horses.
Lions can eat up to 75 pounds at one sitting. That's an entire baby calf from hooves to head at a single meal.
They would be an apex predator of Southern California, and they might, in enough time, evolve into a new American lion.
"80 years after people." In Detroit, at the Always Christmas shop, it's beginning to look a lot less like Christmas. "100 years after people." The 150-foot-tall curves of Knott's Berry Farm's Silver Bullet are about to reach breaking point. Incredibly, this coaster's doom comes from the inside, due to a surprising feature hidden in its design. To keep this noisy ride from disturbing the theme park's neighbors, engineers filled each of the rails of the 1,300-foot-long roller coaster with sand. This actually cuts down the ride's decibel level by at least a half.
It's actually, if you've heard it run, it's an extremely quiet ride.
But hairline cracks in the roller coaster's steel, after 100 years of neglect, signal the end of this ride.
Well, it's kind of an ironic thing. If you have sand in the track, if you get moisture in there, if you get water in there, then you'll trap it in there, and that will probably accelerate corrosion on the inside.
Water, trapped by the sand, speeds up internal corrosion in the rails, weakening the steel, including the bolts.
It's the connections that start to fail first. That's almost true in any structure.
Bolts snap, steel bends, and the entire track begins to wave crazily. This extreme roller coaster makes its final plunge. "120 years after people." The winter resort destination of Palm Springs has reverted completely to desert, where snowbirds and the retired once lounged by the pool. Sand, yucca, and mesquite cover almost all the remnants of civilization. Yet the aerial tramway still stands. 5 giant steel towers once supported the cable cars that ferried holidaymakers up 8,500 feet. The steel has survived for over a century. But one thing will set up a catastrophic chain reaction. A constant, steady corrosion at the base of each tower. The problem begins with the cable itself.
The track cables on this tram are almost 3 inches in diameter. Those are huge. Those are really big cables. And they're not one piece of wire. They're many, many pieces of wire wrapped around each other in a rope fashion.
But the constant, steady pressure of a hanging cable car and over a century of erosion on the tightly wound wires finally causes the cable to snap. It is the first of a cascade of catastrophes. The crashing gondola swings down into tower number 1. The rust-weakened tower cannot withstand the impact, and it begins to collapse.
And as that tower fell, it's liable to put too much torque on the next tower, which would then pull it over, and then it's liable to put too much torque on the next tower, which would pull it over, and so on up the mountain. You'd have that domino effect. Because one tower fell, then it would daisy chain up.
5 towers, connected by 2 miles of cable, pull each other down from the bedrock of the mountain and fall in an avalanche of rubble, dust, and twisted metal. "130 years after people." Nearly all signs of human holidays have been wiped off the face of the earth. But like a ghost of Christmas past, the fruitcake lives on. Protected by its anaerobic mix of sugar, flour, and alcohol. In fact, the oldest recorded fruitcake in the time of humans was more than 130 years old. It was baked in 1878 by an elderly grandmother who died shortly after it came out of the oven, and the family couldn't part with it. In 2003, the baker's great-grandson presided over a tasting of the cake, where it was deemed to be still edible. Now, as fruitcakes continue to defy decay, throughout America, wild turkeys continue to roam. These are the descendants of mankind's Thanksgiving turkeys, but not the ones eaten by modern Americans. They are the lean and fast native breed that was eaten by the Pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving. The creature that Benjamin Franklin thought should be the national bird lives on as a feathered reminder of holidays past in a life after people.